What is this fever dream ass shit? This is hell. This is PvP purgatory, where brain cells go to die. That's a meta warden too. A MetamucilWarden. They're giving me the same effect. I'm about to shit my pants watching this.
Hey gamers, today's video is going to be a more low-key one. I always feel kind of weird publishing these less edited videos, so I hope you gamers don't mind. I actually wanted to take a moment to chat about the recently implemented Battleground weekend event that just happened, as well as some of the prevalent and reoccurring discussions that surround BGs in general. I thought I'd share my thoughts and suggestions, and then open up the floor to you gamers to hear what you have to say in the comments. Let's first discuss the necessary background information to understand what exactly is going on here. In case you missed it, ESO is now going to occasionally have these Battleground Weekend PvP events. For a handful of days, Battlegrounds will be locked to a specific mode, meaning if you queue for Battlegrounds, you will only queue into that specific mode. For example, we just had a Capture the Relic weekend. For the duration of this mini-event, you will also earn 25% more alliance points and experience from completing BG matches. The player reception to the announcement of these BG events was rather mixed. I'd say that there were two prominent opposing perspectives. On one hand, you had newer or more casual PvPers and even non-PvPers excited about the prospect of earning more AP and XP and being able to queue up for their favorite kinds of BG modes without worrying about getting served that dreaded deathmatch mode. On the other, you had sweatier PvPers that were disappointed with the incentives and rewards of these events, as a small bonus to the amount of AP and experience points that one could earn from BGs doesn't really appeal to high-leveled veteran players that PvP all the time. Some of these kinds of players also dislike the fact that they'd have to suffer through the more objective-based BG modes for the duration of these events, or sit a majority of them out entirely, seeing as deathmatch is the preferred mode amongst this crowd. Others vowed to channel their disdain for this event into pure, unbridled rage on the battlefield by slaughtering all of the objective enthusiasts in their path. But more on this later. I think it's fair to say that these events were aimed towards newer players rather than veteran ones, perhaps in an attempt to expose more players to Battlegrounds, something that I think is desperately needed. By giving players more of a reason to participate in them, what with bonus AP and XP and the possibility to queue into BGs on a weekend when the mode is your cup of tea. So we recently had the first BG weekend event. How did it go? It was interesting. Some quick things about me so that you're well aware of the bias that I may bring to this discussion. I main support in PvP and have 4 years of PvP experience. My preferred kind of PvP is small scaling. Because my old small scale homies all quit the game some time ago, I've been getting my fill of PvP content by zerging with my trading guild homies on the weekend and solo queuing into BGs. I'm too shy to join a new small scale, plus PvP mains are kinda weird champs, so I've been fighting for my life in the solo queue. My preferred BG mode is deathmatch, but I don't mind the more objective-based games as I actually kind of enjoy the prospect of adding a little bit of strategy, a little bit of spice to my games. Except Capture the Relic, man. Fuck Capture the Relic. All my homies hate Capture the Relic. Because I play support, I'm only ever as strong as my teammates. I spend matches following my team around and keeping them alive to the best of my ability. Or, if my team is very scattered, I try to pick the strongest player out of the bunch and stick by them for the duration of the match. When it comes to the eternal debate of
fuck you, every mode is deathmatch
versus
fuck off with this deathmatch in my objective-based mode,
I would say I land somewhere along the lines of it's perfectly reasonable to try and play the objective while also killing people, fuckers. Let's break that down real quick. Remember the two kinds of player reactions from earlier? Yeah, well, the people that fall into these ways of thinking are constantly at odds with one another, and there are definitely extremists on both sides. On one hand, you have players that are only interested in killing other players, no matter what BG mode they're in, even if it means casting aside any semblance of strategy or positional and group awareness. On the other, you have players that are only interested in the objective, and claim that anyone dares PvP in a PvP mode is griefing and not helping the team. Meanwhile, they'll go 0-15 and earn the least amount of points on the scoreboard by the end of the match. I really don't understand why it's so damn difficult to just expect to PvP in Battlegrounds, but then also keep the strategy of the game mode in the back of your mind. Like, bruh, you know that killing opponents and eliminating them from the map for a moment in and of itself is pretty strategic, yeah? But I digress. So why am I giving you gamers all of this context? Well, it certainly felt as if this recent BG event really shone a light on this never-ending conflict concerning how one ought to play in Battlegrounds. I don't know about you all, but a lot of my BG matches were kinda whack this weekend. I try not to get too salty when objective Andes get immediately rolled and smoked on in BGs, especially if they're at least trying to get out there and play, but it does feel bad, man, to have all my hots up and be spamming burst heals like a motherfucker and still constantly be forced to watch my teammates drop like flies all around me. Because this BG event appealed to so many of these kinds of players that roll up in PvE gear, and because I play support and my experience in Battlegrounds is directly influenced by the performance of my teammates, this was just an unfortunate outcome that I had to deal with. But hey, it wasn't all that bad. If it troubled me so much, surely I could re-roll to be a damage dealer myself, no? Nah, the main problems that I had with this event actually had to do with the people themselves, or rather how they would conduct themselves. While most of my teams consisted of less experienced PvPers that would die in one global cooldown, sometimes I would get the odd super competent player on my team that I would then follow around because they actually stayed alive. This unfortunately subjected me to potentially getting heat from my other teammates for quote-unquote not playing objective. Man, I blocked so many people this weekend, dude. It's crazy. In a lot of my matches, I'd have some bozo on my team whom I didn't recognize, and the PvP community is pretty small. I recognize a lot of homies who would start hurling really nasty insults towards any of the teammates that even remotely PvP'd during the Capture the Relic match. Again, I don't know how many times and in how many different languages I need to say this, but it is perfectly reasonable to kill people in PvP environments. In Battlegrounds, killing your opponents, no matter what the game mode, is always a good idea. More dead gamers means less alive players, and less alive players means you'll be met with less resistance when attempting to complete the objective at hand, whether that's standing on a flag, swipe or no swiping a relic, or carrying the spicy meatball. Part of the beauty of these objective-based battleground modes is the notion of the group's effort to balance the act of completing objective tasks, all the while eliminating opponents. For some, this is a completely incomprehensible concept, to the point where they find it necessary to berate others for their choice to do a little PvP. It was pretty unpleasant to have so many two heads like these on my teams this weekend, because as you can imagine, they played about as terribly as you might expect. Not to mention the fact that it's just generally unpleasant to read the kinds of messages that they'd write. The other side of the spectrum isn't innocent either, though. Many sweaty PvPers took it upon themselves to disregard team play to slaughter as many objective Andes as possible, knowing full well that many of them would come out to play in light of this event. I'm in a few PvP discords, and I know that these kinds of gamers love to shit on the kinds of players that I just finished describing. And while I can't help but feel a twinge of glee to see these meanies get put in their place, I'm aware that this, what I'm describing, is no better. If anything, it just continues to add fuel to the fire and keep these two opposing camps of players in dispute with one another, leaving those that don't belong to either camp or that just don't fucking care caught in the crossfire. This is especially annoying when these kinds of players go at it in the group chat in the middle of a BG match, and I'm left running around the map getting parsed on by the entire lobby waiting for a teammate to come to my aid, while one teammate is at the spawn PvPing in the group chat with another teammate that's crouched in some corner of the map. While these kinds of disputes happen frequently enough as it is, the BG event I think really encouraged players from both extremes to attend Battlegrounds and partake in those extreme manners, and I can't say that it was a super enjoyable experience. As a support, I really don't mind healing a player that's still learning the ropes of PvP, even if they get dookied on all match. But I do really mind being on a team with Pepegas that get dunked on the entire match and then take out their frustrations on their teammates. And this event really seemed to bring out a lot of those players. As I mentioned in my dungeon experience video though, this is par for the course when solo queuing into group activities. You're bound to run into people like this. But to bring this all back to the BG event, I think that the excessive amounts of these kinds of strained social interactions between objective Andes that feel extra empowered to be self-righteous in the group chat in light of this event, and those that feel as if they have all the more reason to oppose them, is kind of a crappy experience for players that are newer to the Battlegrounds genre. And this event was mostly supposed to be for them, right? I don't often consider proposing changes to ESO systems in my videos, as I feel that it isn't really my place to do so, but I think it would really be worthwhile if the devs considered having the BG events be optional instead of mandatory. This way, the objective Andes can all queue into their beloved modes together and avoid the kind of PvP that makes them mauled. The veteran PvPers that aren't keen on the idea of being forced to play out the same objective match over and over again can then queue for Battlegrounds regularly and fight like-minded opponents. And of course, when deathmatch is the mode for the weekend, that will root out all of the deathmatch enjoyers from the regular queue so that objective enthusiasts don't have to worry about them. Perhaps by separating these two fierce factions of players, the animosity that plagues them can be better quelled, and other players can be less affected by it. I think having the element of choice in a situation like this would be an epic dub, boss man, and I hope the devs consider it. I hope that it would be a viable solution. I know that the devs meant well by creating a Battleground event, and I don't want it to come off like it was a bad idea or anything. I think it just needs a bit of tweaking. For what it's worth, I'm sure that there were a lot of people that loved this event. Even some of the deathmatch enthusiasts enjoyed it. I saw plenty of scoreboard screenshots in PvP Discord servers of gamers gloating about going 50-0 in a lobby full of objective enjoyers. I'm not sure how those objective players felt about that, to be fair. There are plenty of other arguments to be made for the kinds of quirks that may arise with a Battlegrounds event that's structured in this manner. I only merely pointed out ones that stood out the most for me. As someone that enjoys both the killing aspect and the objective aspect of BGs, and someone who relies greatly on the performance and cooperation of her teammates, seeing as she is there to support them. Did you gamers participate in this first Battlegrounds event? If so, what did you think about it? What did you like about it? And if you weren't too keen about the event, what would you have liked to have seen altered to make this event more enjoyable? I'm curious to hear what you think, and maybe, just maybe, if there's a dev watching this video, they just might be too. So keep it respectful, gamers. SMH my shaking head. Alright, that's all for this video. Thank you for sticking around and listening to me listening to my TED Talk, and thank you to my YouTube members for sponsoring my content creation endeavors. See you in the next video. Cheers.